Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing part 2 in this start to finish series with these fall themed journals. These journals are made from printables from the Junk Journal Studio, along with some of my vintage paper and some coffee dyed paper. I will have Michelle's link down in the description in this video as well. I'm starting off with some heavyweight chipboard. So this is a little bit heavier than what would be in a cereal box. And I can't even remember where I got this, but it came in huge sheets that were actually folded in half. So I honestly, for the life of me, I really wish I could remember where these came from. But I had to trim them down, I had to start off by trimming them down with a blade and a ruler just because they were so large. And then I cut them down to about 12.5 by 9, and I am now adding my score lines here because I want to give myself about a half an inch of a spine. So on one of these, it's actually a little bit smaller than the other, but not a huge amount, but it is just slightly thinner than a half an inch, but that's okay. And it has to do with the fact that my scoreboard is a little bit weird. You can see me kind of messing around with this cardstock here. And I actually am having to use a ruler with my scoreboard here because this chipboard is so thick that I can't, when I run my bone folder down the groove, it wants to kind of like meander away because it doesn't stay in the groove. So I just use my ruler, line it up, and then do it that way. And then I'm coming back now and just using my bone folder again right in the crease of that to really fold this down, because while it looks like there's a score line, it's not enough of what to just be able to crease it like you would do a regular piece of cardstock. So I'm having to kind of work this just a little bit, just making sure that I'm, putting my bone folder in that crease as much as I can, and then I will burnish it down really well here just to make sure that I have a nice good crease, which will help me later when I'm having to add the cover and fabric and everything. So I did that with both pages or both covers, so I cut them to exactly the same, and then I'm just putting in the signature just to kind of make sure. So again, I cut these to 12.5 and by 9, so that I have my half-inch spine, which leaves me like a 6-inch cover, which gives me just enough space so that these papers, which are 8.5 by 11, folded in half, so they're 8.5 by 5.5. It gives it a little bit of wiggle room so that as the journal grows, it's still covered, and also just leaves a little space to protect the inside pages. So I have pulled out some vintage fabric from my stash for this first cover, and I really just love the colors in this fabric. And so I'm going to just kind of lay this chipboard down and kind of eyeball where I want it. There was like a specific flower that I really want on the front cover. And so I'm trying to line this up so that I can make the most of that and not waste a lot of fabric at the same time. And so you can see I have a little border all the way around that will obviously wrap to the inside. And then for the other journal, I'm going to use some of this green fabric that I have in my stash. This one's not vintage, but I love it. And so I want to use it. I have this actually in a couple different colors because I just really like this fabric. But I decided to also use double-sided adhesive to glue this fabric down, partially because this chipboard, I don't want it to warp with the moisture from a liquid adhesive. And I also wasn't sure if I put some liquid adhesive, because this chipboard is black, I wasn't sure if it would stain or, do anything weird to the fabric. So I just opted for the double-sided adhesive, which works really well, just covered the entire thing in it. And then I'm going to pull back the release papers just in a small section of this so that I can get everything lined up. And then I will do the last of the release paper so you can kind of see. I'm just getting this all neatly laid out. I'm actually trying to use some of the grid lines to keep everything straight as well there on my craft desk, or, my what is it called? Words are hard today. My self-healing mat. And just using the grids there to kind of keep everything lined up. And so I pulled a couple, I'm just lining everything up, and then I press it down to the one section that's exposed, and then I will pull the rest of the release paper to get everything pressed down and just making sure I don't have any wrinkles in the fabric. And then I will pull the rest of that release paper and get everything straight. And I also will burnish that down with my bone folder. And then I'm trimming down just a little bit of the excess here as well, which you can't really see. And I did the little corner shapes as well to try to take some of the bulk out of the corners. And then in particular where the spine is, because this is chipboard that's folded, I don't want to add a lot of bulk there. So I took a couple of little snips, just very skinny little like V shapes at each edge of the spine. And then I'm gluing that down into the spine with some art glitter glue. That's a nice sturdy glue as well. But that way, when I'm doing this, it just takes some of that bulk around those folds and makes it easier, especially when you have thicker fabrics that you're doing. It's just really helpful. So then I went around and added some more double-sided adhesive, and now I'm going to start wrapping the inside. And so whenever you're doing this and you're wrapping a cover, you always want to do opposite sides. So you do top and bottom first, and then you do left and right, or left and right and then top and bottom, but it just gives you a better look and a sharper corner. And so when you do it this way, so I'm just going to go through and do top and bottom, and then I'll come through and do the sides. And you can see here when I pull this paper, obviously I don't have glue on this, section right here. And so I'm going to use my liquid adhesive here, my art glitter glue, for those little like wing sections on there. I like it because it dries really quickly. It's really good, strong adhesive as well. And since I have the other layers, I don't have to worry about it messing with the chipboard too much. It's just a little bit of that liquid glue there. But it does keep those corners down. And I do think that I'm going to come back through and add some book corners to these journal covers. But when I was looking through my stash, I realized that I must have used my last ones and not replaced them. So I need to order some more. And so I'll add those onto the cover in another video. But for now, I'm just going to now sew in the signature. So I need to cover the inside of this journal, and I am using some Tim Holtz paper here just because I like the quality of the paper, and also the size of it for this journal worked out really perfectly because it's 12 by 12. And so I'm just going to cover the entire thing. So I trimmed this down so that I have just a little bit of a border all the way around on the inside. And but this double-sided adhesive is just a really strong adhesive, and so it will hold everything in place. And I'm going to do the same kind of process where I start out with only part of this exposed. You can kind of see I'm just making sure everything's going to fit in there. But because I need it to be, pretty precise where I'm placing it, and you'll kind of only get one chance with this, the double-sided adhesive, it being pretty serious stuff. So, and I have a tendency to drop things. So for me, it's just easier if I make sure that I have those release papers just kind of pulled back a little bit so that I can use them like little wings and handles to get my stuff in the right place first. And then once I have it lined up, then I go through and kind of press down the exposed edge again and then pull the rest of the release papers. It just works better for me when I do it that way so that I don't accidentally drop something or whatever. But the problem here, it's not a problem, but one of the things I have to do is kind of work this spine. So this is one of the reasons why I also scored this ahead of time. It just makes this process so much easier when you have all the layers of adhesive and a really thick cardstock and a really heavy chipboard. So having the folds already in there, that just made that process easier of kind of refolding it once I got the inner cover put in there. And so now I want to add the signature. And most of the time when you see me add a signature, you'll see me use a book cradle quite a bit. And not everybody has that. So today I'm going to do this without using my book cradle, just so you can see one other way that this can be done. So I'm starting off with my ruler on the outside edge of my signature. And so I don't normally measure this, but for this journal, I decided to do that. So I started off creating, making a little mark in the middle, which would be at 4 1/4, and then an inch down from the top and an inch up from the bottom. And now I'm going to line this up on my cover, on the outside of the cover, and I'm just eyeballing this part, but then I'm going to make marks in those same exact places. And then I'm just leaving, I'm using the signature to do that because the cover is actually obviously a little bit larger than my signature. And so then I'm just coming through. I have a foam little mat. You could do this into just an old book or whatever, that I'm punching the holes in. And so here, obviously I can't punch the holes from the outside in, so I'm going to remeasure in this exact spot. In hindsight, if I would have done this part first, then I could have just used the holes that I punched as the guides, but my brain just wasn't thinking in that way today, so I just remeasured the whole thing. So again, I put a mark at 4 1/4, and then an inch from the top and bottom. And then I'm just making sure that when I go through with my awl, that I kind of fold the signature back almost closed to make sure that I'm getting the hole all the way through, like the very edge of those folds of the paper, if that makes sense. So you want it right along the edge. And I'm going to measure 3 lengths of thread here, and I'm going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So I'm starting from the middle hole to the outside, and then I will come back in at the top hole all the way to the middle of the signature, and then all the way down to the bottom hole, skipping that middle hole. I'm going to go back out to the outside of the cover, and then from the outside cover I'm going to come up to that middle hole again, and then come back to the inside. And you hear me say this every time. I drop my glue bottle there. Anyway, whenever you are coming back through this hole, just make sure that your needle doesn't go through the thread that's already there. If you split that thread, you can't tighten down the thread the way that you need to. So you can kind of see here, it's okay on the inside, but it's a little loose on the inside. It was okay on the outside. And then I just double check it. I pull it tight, and you always want to pull in the direction of the sewing. So you saw me kind of pull up and down. And then I'm just tying a knot around that long stitch. So there's a thread on the left side and a thread on the right side, and I just tied the knot over it. You've seen me do this a billion times, but just in case you're new here, then that's how I do that. So just doing a really quick flip through of all of the beautiful papers in this journal. These printables are some of my favorite fall printables, and so I'm very excited to create another journal with these. Again, you can kind of see I have the coffee dyed and the vintage papers in here, and I'm just especially toward the last half of the signature, kind of just gently folding it down with my hand just to keep everything nice and neat. And then this one, you can see I actually added a little bit of trim down the center spine there because I had to split that piece of paper. It wasn't wide enough for that cover. And so I just cut it in half, and then I added a piece of trim down the spine, and I really like actually how that turned out. And then this is how this signature looks. It's similar papers, but they're not identical. And but it does have, coffee dyed paper again and vintage paper in it as well. I just thought I'd do a quick flip through so you can kind of see how these are going to look once we start adding in pockets next and all of those kinds of things. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I will have links for my Facebook group and my website and all my affiliate links in the description of this video. And until next time, bye.